A very good evening to you. You're watching the Hot Seat program on TV1. This evening on our show we want to focus your attention on international law and to answer questions like what is international law and how does international law function. We have a very eminent guest joining us all the way from the Nalsa University of Law in Hyderabad, India, Dr. Balkista Reddy. A very good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening.
Let me at the very outset ask you, what is international law?
International law is interstate law. International law regulates the relation between states, regulation among the states. International law is intrastate law. This is one view, only confined to states, means countries. But today, that international law has, expanded its, scope. Today, it not only regulates the relation between states, but also regulates the conduct of international organizations like United Nations, WTO, international organizations, individuals, non-state entities, particularly non-state entities like international NGOs, multinational corporations. These are all now part of the international law, subjects of international law.
So sir, now when it comes to a normal judiciary, a normal country, you know how the lawyers are appointed, you know how the judges are appointed. How does this system work when it comes to international law? Who appoints the lawyers? Who appoints the judges?
International law, we have an international judiciary called International Court of Justice. That is, situated in The Hague actually. 15-member judges are there. They are represented by world, all the legal systems of the world. They represent from different continents. All the continents of the world have a representation in the International Court of Justice. They elect for 9 years. So election based on the General Assembly and Security Council, they elect the judges of international
General Assembly and the Security Council of the United Nations.
Yes, including.
So the United Nations also has a part to play when it comes.
Exactly. ICJ is part of the United Nations. United Nations has 6 organs. One of the organ, that is principal judicial organ, is the International Court of Justice.
So sir, when it comes to international law, how do countries see when outsiders or individuals who are not from their country want to prosecute a country for something they have done? Do they accept this? Do they decline it? How do they see it?
Again, in international law, we have 2 branches. One is public international law, which governs the relation between states. If any issue happened between India and Sri Lanka, it is called public international law. But there is also other law that is called private international law. If an individual of Sri Lanka settled in UK has a problem in something, so this comes individual level. This is called private international law, conflict of laws. So conflict of laws. Each country has their own law, but when it comes, there is a conflict. How to resolve issues like which law should be chosen, which jurisdiction should be chosen. This kind of issues happen in the private international law sphere.
So when it comes to an example like what happens if Sri Lankan court, the Sri Lankan judiciary gives out a ruling and it goes to the international court, and then there's a contradiction of the judgment. What happens? Who do we?
It's a very nice question you asked. This is called, domestic If international law and municipal law, they call municipal law means law of the land, Sri Lankan law. As long as no conflict, international law goes with well. But if it is a conflict between international law and domestic law, normally courts have taken view that domestic law prevails over international law. Whether it's Sri Lanka or India, and most of the countries, we call it dualism. Most of the countries, 90% of the world countries follow dualism. Dualism means international law is different and domestic law is different. If at all international law has to be implemented, countries have to accept. How they do that? Through their enabling legislations. Most of the time have looked at Sri Lanka or India, all 80%. Our court says that it is the domestic law is more important than international law. This is the situation all over the world, most of the countries.
So when it comes to the overall rule of law in individual countries, how can a person approach the international law? How can is it the normal way that you do it with the local judiciaries? What is the process there?
Yes, again, it's good question, but individual can't access international court of justice or international law because international law regulates the state. So again you have to approach state. State has to take up that issue, but not individual. Except there are few courts like European Court of Justice. it's a new, trend is happening actually. Entire European context, individual can approach direct to the European Court of Justice, but not, other courts. For example, ICJ. As an individual, I can't approach ICJ. But interesting thing now, International Criminal Court is started actually in 1998. That's called Rome Statute of International Law. International Court is there. That is giving certain crimes like war crimes, crime, genocide, crime against humanity. This kind of crimes now individual is also going to be part of that, but not earlier. This is a new trend in international criminal law.
Now, you've come all the way from Hyderabad for a seminar here in Sri Lanka. Can you tell me a bit about the Nalsa University of Law, the college you come from?
I want to tell you that in India, we did a new experiment in creating law universities. Nowhere in the world. First time in 1988, Government of India started this National Law School of India, Bangalore. Then in 1998, NALSA started. This is a new concept. Actually, a special university for single discipline, that is law. We have a LLB, LLM, MPhil, PhD, all in law. We don't take, other things. So this is one way it's contributing a lot to the judiciary, not only domestic judiciary. Our students are doing good jobs in international organizations and international context also. So earlier, for instance, you take India. India used to contribute a lot to the engineers and doctors abroad, but not lawyers. But today, because of this law universities concept, law students are contributing, outside India also. That is a good
overall
positive
situation.
sign.
So, sir, coming back to the point we were discussing, when it comes to international law, you're an expert in the field, you have traveled all over the world. How do you see the situation here in our country? Now, Sri Lanka is a small country, went through a 30-year war. We have been said that we have allegedly committed war crimes. We have been accused of being taken to the International Court of Justice. What do you think of the overall situation now in the country?
Now, last 40 years or if so, now new trends are happening in international relations. We call it globalization, liberalization, privatization, all these new concepts. Whatever the nature of country, size of the country, whether you are a big country or small country, powerful country, powerless country, all are affecting the process of globalization. So, yes, Sri Lanka is part of the Committee of Nations. Sri Lanka is also incorporating all these developments. We have to go with the global society, and past is past. Yes, you had a problem with ethnic problem, all those, but now we have to go along with the current trend. So one thing I can tell, for example, Sri Lanka is a party to the GATT, WTO, all these trading institutions. Now Sri Lanka has to implement those globalization process in the domestic context also.
Do you think when it comes to the rule of law, that Sri Lanka has a good future?
Particularly in developing countries, we used to have this kind of problem. So rule of law, internal security problems, all. But now these problems are taken back seat. Now development is important, employment is important. So countries has to prosper. So that is most of the countries, including Sri Lanka, we have to take up the agenda. Agenda is the development.
With that, we go into a short commercial break. When we come back, we have more on international law. Stay with Hot Seat. Welcome back. You're watching the Hot Seat on TV1. This evening we have a very eminent guest in the legal profession all the way from Hyderabad, India, Dr. Bakista Reddy. Good evening to you, Doctor, once again. Now we were discussing about the rule of law and the legal situation in the country. Let me ask you, you have been in the field, as I mentioned before. What challenges does the legal fraternity in the world internationally face due to these new trends in the world?
Now we have one agreement called GATS agreement, part of the WTO, World Trade Organization. Now all the professional services now part of the WTO GATS, General Agreement on Trading Services. Once you are party to the WTO GATS, you have to open up your services. This agreement contains more than 160 services including business services, professional services. When I say professional services, legal profession is also now part of that. Once a member country accepts, like Sri Lanka is a party to the WTO GATS, India is a party to the WTO, we have to open up. We have to open up, and we have to open up to the global society. So here, globalization of legal profession is happening. Now foreign law firms are coming into many countries. Maybe in India we have that thing. But in the domestic context, advocates are not willing to open up that because they feel that this is going to a threat for them. If foreign law firms comes, foreign lawyers come.
How is it a threat, Mr. Reddy?
Threat means, foreign law firms obviously they are advanced, for not unlike, advocates in the domestic context. So they fear that. Of course, we should not fear. For example, take India. India has done, wonders in information technology. So we can also do same in the legal profession also. But people are, advocates are not realizing that. But one obligation is that once you are party, you have to. All international law operates on the basis of consent. You have given consent, voluntary consent. Nobody forces you to join a WTO treaty or X treaty. So if you are member, you are signed and ratified the WTO treaty, you have to implement that. Only it's a matter of time. For example, developing countries, least developed countries, they can bargain for some concession, time frame. But ultimately they have to implement, and it is whether it is India or Sri Lanka, we have to open up our legal service. It's a matter of time.
A popular belief when it comes to enacting the law in any country, I believe, is the delay in the legal system of that particular country. Does this apply to international law as well? Is there a delay?
Yes, more so. International law, international legal environment is completely different from the domestic. In international domestic context, you have a respective organizational setup. For example, legislature, parliament is there to make law, executive is there to implement, judiciary is there to interpret that, whether right or wrong. But these things are lacking in international context. We do not have world parliament, we do not have executive, though judiciary like ICJ, I told you, it is there. But the ICJ get jurisdiction based on the consent. Countries have to accept that. Then only it will come into force. This is a flaw in international system. Second thing is, domestic context, force is important. Like you can, enforce all this through danda or, force. Okay, if anybody violates, police is there, courts are there. But these things are lacking in international context. So, for effective implementation of any international rule of law, according to me, new approaches should be implemented. For example, cooperation is important, coordination is important, convinces. You have to convince X countries that this is good, then only countries will take part. These are new approaches, cooperation, coordination, convincing. This is the approaches which you adopt. Effective implementation of international law happens. Otherwise, if you apply domestic law, then reverse, because this is a law between sovereign states.
You mentioned about cooperation when it comes to international law. Are there countries that do not cooperate to international law?
Generally, 95% cooperate because it's everybody's interest. There are rarest of the rare cases where violation happens, but majority of the cases countries cooperate because they are also getting benefit out of that cooperation, that part of the process.
So there is this, if I'm not mistaken, under the WTO, the courts of arbitration. Does this also fall under international law? Is it something different? How does that work?
Yeah, when you say WTO dispute settlement is completely different. For example, it is a time bound. Earlier there was a dispute settlement mechanism in the GATT system, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Article 22 and 23 of the GATT mandates the dispute settlement process. But that was a weak dispute settlement mechanism. One of the criticism against the GATT system was weak dispute settlement mechanism. Today we have a WTO. WTO dispute settlement mechanism is a very strict, stringent, time bound. Within 1.5 years, all your dispute have to be settled. This is not there even in most of the domestic court. In India, it takes 15 years, 20 years if it is a civil case. Same with Sri Lanka. That is the new trend. Particularly the good thing about the WTO dispute is it is time bound. Second important thing we have to remember is most of the, for example, I will give you, the ICJ was established way back in 1945. last 60 or near 70 years of existence of ICJ, it gave around 150 judgments. It pronounced 150 judgments. Out of some judgments executed, not executed, this. But last 20 years, WTO was established in 1st January 1995. If you look at past 20 years, around 500 judgments it pronounced, and most of the judgments are executed. The reason why is, if countries don't implement, they have a fear of trade embargoes, trade blockades. Other countries will block, your trade. So because of that fear, WTO dispute settlement mechanism is then the ICC.
So are you saying that if a country or a group of people need to adhere to international law, the penalty should be there? Is that what you're saying?
Penalty earlier it was not there, but here now it is not a pecuniary penalty, but fear that they don't cooperate with trade with you. Once you are aloof, if you are isolated, it is difficult to exist in the globalized world.
Let me once again zoom out a bit and ask a question in terms of the law perspective of things. Now when it comes to Sri Lanka, a popular belief is that the lawyers get paid very well and they are living a very good life, because there are a lot of cases in the country and they take a long time to give a judgment, so hence they are rich. Is this the same in India?
No, it is other way. Normally in India or most of the countries, lawyers are paid less. For example, I will tell you the problem with the legal profession is 10% of the lawyers are sharing 90% of the case. Those who are having a name, fame, they get most of the cases. Majority of the lawyers, 90% of the lawyers are sharing only 10%. So people are having a brief less. They don't have a cases also. This situation is also there. The law profession again is, if you have a reputation, goodwill, name, you are bound with the case.
Is the law profession in any way at risk at present? Do you think the people still have faith in judiciaries, whether it be international or whether it be domestic?
It is, they have a faith in that. But yes, legal professional, like earlier I said, it is going to face a lot of challenges because new kinds of cases are coming. Now, for example, you take information technology, cyber technology, e-commerce. These are the new areas coming. It is a big challenge for a lawyer to deal with this kind of cases. He needs to have a technology, he needs to have a sound knowledge in many respects. Not alone law will help you. If you are overall, then you can do better.
With that, we will go into another commercial break. What are the challenges that are faced by the legal fraternity? We will come back with the answers. Stay with Hot Seat. Welcome back to the Hot Seat. We were in discussion with Dr. Balkista Reddy on the challenges faced by the legal fraternity all around the world. So Doctor, continuing the discussion we had earlier, you said that there are a number of challenges in terms of technology and the new advances in the world. Now, what a common situation all around the world is the technology is developing, the education levels are developing. However, the literature available for lawyers around the world seem to be very limited. No one seems to be interested in developing that sector. What do you have to say about this?
Exactly, you are right question. Still we are following the traditional subjects, traditional issues. Now most of the, for example, in India, law schools, law university, where I am from, like Nalsar University Law, we are changing the syllabi according to the socio-economic needs of the society. Not you can't teach 30 years back, 40 years back what you taught. So now we are curricula is including cyber issues, e-commerce related, new technology driven or new issues which we are also every time we change our syllabi according to what is required for present day.
So in Sri Lanka, you are here for a seminar for the law students here in the country. Can you tell me a bit about that as well?
First, let me thank the Maragoda Trust. They invited me. They have a tie-up with University of Sarjan, Kotelwala Defense University. Every year they invite experts, and the experts give lectures in different components of international law. Earlier they had environmental law, trade law. This time I am giving the lectures on aerospace law. That is where I am here.
Can you tell me a bit of what aerospace law is?
Yes, air law and space law. These two different branches. Air law regulates the flights up to the aeroplane can fly, that is called air zone. So we have a international treaties to regulate aviation activities. Important treaty is the Chicago Convention 1944, which regulates the entire civil aviation of the global society. So including, almost 192 members are parties to the Chicago Convention. There is one organization called ICAO, ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, which frame the rules, which implements the rules through various treaties and annexures. We have a lot of technical aspects. Most of the civil aviation, when we say, it is a technical. So to regulate that, we have an International Civil Aviation Organization. We have a liability issues. For example, we have Warsaw Treaty on liability. If some mishap happen, how to fix liability? That's called Warsaw system is there. If safety related issues, we have a lot of technical, like licensing, personal, pilot licensing to all this safety management system. There are 19 annexes which regulate the day-to-day civil aviation, different aspects of technical related issues.
So I'm quite fascinated by your area of expertise. Now let me give you an example and ask you a question. Now very recently there was a delay in a flight, Sri Lankan Airlines flight bound from Germany to Sri Lanka. Now however we learned that through the EU system that the people who are living in the European Union will only be compensated. So is there any way the aerospace law can be?
No, it is, again for liability for death, liability for damage, liability for delay. If your goods are delayed, so you can come ask compensation. If loss of baggage, all this is a set rules are there. We call liability system, Warsaw system on liability, Warsaw Convention 1929, Hague Protocol, Montreal Convention of 1919, which has enhanced the liability issues. Whether it's for passenger, whether it's for cargo, all these we have a system inbuilt, and Sri Lanka is a party. Even here also, not only European context, but if your goods are lost or any happen, we have to pay according to the international convention.
So if I am subject to a damage or a delay or any form of mishap up in another country or up in the air, who do I go and tell? Where do I go?
You have it. That's called jurisdictional point, where you bought ticket, where the transaction happened, where you took flight. There are 4 important jurisdiction. You will get jurisdiction. You can sue your court also. You can sue in your Sri Lankan court. Definitely they will take up this issue, even though that airlines belongs to some other country, because you are part of the Sri Lanka. So jurisdiction gets based on your residence.
So, Mr. Reddy, Dr. Reddy, popular belief is, here in Sri Lanka at least, is that a legal case would incur a lot of money. It's expensive. So therefore a lot of middle class people or poor people would not actually go to a court and make a complaint, maybe to avoid avoid their money going away. Is this the same when it comes to other countries as well?
Yes, this one criticism against the judiciary is it delays years together. That is there. That's why people are now to some extent losing faith in the judicial institutions. So now they are coming out with new system that is called ADR mechanism, that is called alternate dispute settlements. For example, arbitration, conciliation, mediation. These are the new approaches they are taking. It's time consuming and also less expensive. So arbitration is a preferred method to settle the disputes, particularly at national and international context also.
You also mentioned earlier, when it comes to domestic law, there is the executive, the judiciary and the legislator to compile the law. Now when it comes to international law, you said that there is a lack of this, and however, what is the mechanism that is there to monitor those who uphold international law, the body itself? Is there monitoring or?
It's a self-monitoring. I can say 2 principles. International law operates on the basis of consent. You have to consent that I want to be a party to treaty. Second, once you consent, you have to implement in good faith. That is called pacta sunt servanda, good faith principle. International law operates at good faith. So you yourself have to commit it, so you have to implement in good faith. good faith, because there is no supranational authority which can punish you, which can prosecute you. So entire international law, international relations operates on the basis of good faith.
So when it comes to United Nations, we know that the veto power exists. However, when it comes to international law, this is not a case. No country is supreme over anyone else. So everyone is treated equally. Okay, since we are approaching the final few minutes of our show, let me ask you, sir, now you've been here for a seminar in the country. You are expert in the international law in the region. You are from a very reputed university yourself, from Hyderabad. What do you have to say of the region as a whole when it comes to democracy, when it comes to rule of law? What do you think?
One, common to our region is we have a regional organization called SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Compared to many regional organizations like NAFTA, SAFTA, European Union, our organization is lacking. We are not that proactive because of many reasons, including political reasons, maybe between India and Pakistan. But now it is a time for us, we all, 8 SAARC countries should cooperate more, and we leave it our small differences, but we have to work for the common good of the people of the countries. So this is my feeling.
Final question. Now, since this is the Hot Seat program, as I told you in the very outset, we tend to ask controversial questions. Let me ask you one final controversial question. Your view on politics?
Politics, my view on politics, of course, countries, they have their own, political setup, their own. I don't want to comment on that, but of course, politics should not hamper development. For example, just I mentioned that SAARC is not doing good because of India and Pakistan. So now it is a time for India and Pakistan should sink your differences, come open and do for betterment of Pakistan people or India people. This is what I want.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy, for joining us this evening on the Hot Seat program. We will join you same time, same place next week as well with a different eminent guest to talk about a different topic. Thank you for watching. For the Newsfirst team, I am Saturanga Puarachi.